Hi, I'm T-Rek, and we're going to do a short tour of my studio, also known as Freakshow Disco Productions HQ, for Thick as Thieves.
Taste yourself now.
We are going to start here at what I think is the most important part of most studios these days, also the most boring part, the computer. So I've got a track here, which is just something I'm kind of working on. So I'm going to run through a couple of sounds. So we start with a kick drum. I then went in and chopped up some drums. A little sort of bell percussion loop. If you turn the cassette on, it just kind of wrecks it. That's a basic rhythm track. The bass, I think, was just a sample. I just grabbed a random couple of bass notes from probably the start of a record, chopped them up sort of randomly and just destroyed them with some plugins until I got something that sounded like a mean bass line. So this is a very sample based sort of thing. I sampled some little loops from an old Motown record, chopped that up into some delays. Then we made some synth sounds. This little thing, it's got a little speaker in the top. It's kind of just great to have there because I can always just turn it on and find notes and play around with things. I often end up sticking a microphone in the top. It's a piece of junk basically, but I like it. But I took that and sampled it, put it through some filters and stuff so it starts to become a synth line. And this track's still very much sort of in process of stuff. I was just sort of throwing vocal ideas at it. Threw her into a delay. I got some Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. And then in the track it sounds like... So it's just a working thing at the moment. I might re-sing something like that or have a vocalist come in, I don't know. That's a very quick sort of explanation of how I use the computer. I'm going to move around the studio and talk about a lot of the other toys and bits of broken junk. And there are all the other things that I would usually employ to kind of put in a track like this. So we will move over to this part of the studio. So over here it's really just sort of practical stuff. This is where I take a lot of sounds out of the computer, run them through these machines and put them back into the computer, or I use these machines to process sounds on the way in. This side is a kind of standard patch bay. This is a valve bass amplifier. I'll often run, kick drums and synthesizers, bass synths through that just to grimy it up and make it dirty. I sort of have patch points so I can put guitar pedals. Pedals are used to process guitar sounds. I can run synthesizers through them. I spend a lot of time trying to make guitars sound like synthesizers, trying to make synthesizers sound like guitars. This thing here was, I think, an old mixer out of a TV studio or something. A friend of mine pulled it apart and said it's actually military spec, so it was probably built to live in a tank or something. All of this stuff is not necessary. It's just stuff that I've accumulated. It's just fun stuff to play with. And so when you run things through it, often things will kind of crunch and break and not do what you expect them to do, and a lot of accidents happen, and that's where I find a lot of cool sounds, like when I'm not looking for them. So from here we're going to move down to the guitar section. This is just a little pedal board, again kind of like the patch bay. Things just come in and out of it constantly, different pedals to warp sounds or synth sounds out of the box. Through the little tube amp here, which is kind of old and a bit broken and just makes some cool noises. There's a synthesizer patched in here. Just makes hideous noises, but you just play around until something sounds cool. This is a cassette deck. I use cassettes a lot for sampling. I also look in op shops for like weird cassettes like this that like people probably made at home. So some other toys living in this area. This is a theremin. Theremin, for anyone that doesn't know, was the first ever, I think, electronic musical instrument. Got a little speaker in it. Everyone knows those sort of squealy noises. Was used a lot in like 50s sci-fi movies and things like that. But I generally, rather than take it out of the speaker there, I feed it to the little guitar amp, again, down here. So instead of sounding kind of horrible like that, it sounds horrible in a different way. Like, And I think that's everything in this area. So now we will move to another section. Pause for effect. This is a workbench, so this this looks different every week. At the moment I'm developing another live show for April Sun in a couple of weeks. So I'll walk through some of the stuff that's here at the moment, but more than likely by the time I do my live show in 2 weeks, half of this won't even be on the stage with me. So the brain of my live show at the moment is the Roland TR8. Great, a digital representation of all the classic Roland drum sounds that many people know and use. So that's my main bass synth, and over here are my sort of lead synths and second synths. Little rocket synth here, which is being fed. So that's the 303, which I'm sort of using as a bass line, and then it's feeding notes over to the little rocket synth, which is this guy. So they're going away, drums. There's a sampler over here, which I'm just running a few samples at the moment. There's one more thing going on here. Just more toys. Still taking shape at the moment. Just getting familiar with the setup, rewiring it until I get something I'm happy with, and then I just jam and jam and jam until I feel confident to walk on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people with nothing planned and improvise an hour of live electronic music. Okay, so we're just going to finish up in here for a minute. This is the next room over from my studio, Studio B. This is where all the guitars that are not being used in the studio live. I do a lot of work in here. A lot of ideas start here when I'm just playing around with records and going through the library. I'll get ideas when I'm working on this computer and then jump straight into the real studio and start piecing things together. So that's it. Thanks for joining me for a tour of my studio. Hopefully I'll put something together that's interesting, and I'll see you at April Sun on April 24th in St Kilda with Brian Fantana, Boogs and Casey Lever. I've been T-Rek. See you later.